the night of the 24th of August, 2001, at Toronto Pearson International Airport, Air Transat Flight 236 stood ready for what was expected to be a routine long-haul journey. It was an ordinary charter flight, carrying mostly people traveling to Portugal for vacation. Families, couples, children, elderly passengers, all of them boarded with the same belief that 7 hours later they would be standing on European soil. The aircraft was an Airbus, a 330, a modern wide-body passenger jet designed for long-distance flights. On that day, there were 293 passengers on board, along with 13 crew members. In the cockpit sat 2 experienced pilots, while 11 cabin crew members were responsible for passenger care. In total, 306 lives were entrusted to a single machine. The aircraft departed from Toronto and climbed its assigned cruising altitude of approximately 39,000 feet. The route led straight across the Atlantic Ocean, covering a distance of nearly 5,600 kilometers, a journey expected to take around 7 hours. Inside, the fuel tanks were approximately 46,900 kilograms of jet fuel, an amount sufficient not only for the entire flight, but also including emergency reserves and alternate airport requirements. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. Inside the cabin, the lights were dimmed. Some passengers were asleep. Some were watching movies. Some were trying to put their children to sleep. Outside the windows, there was nothing but darkness, thousands of meters of deep Atlantic Ocean below, and a sky filled with stars above. This is the moment when humans place complete trust in technology. Inside the cockpit, the instruments quietly performed their duties. But a few hours later, something small disturbed its silence, a slight discrepancy in the fuel gauges. The amount of fuel in the left and right wing tanks was no longer equal. This was not unusual. Pilots are trained for such situations. According to Airbus procedures, they opened the fuel cross-feed valve to balance the fuel between the tanks. It was a correct decision, but a decision made with incomplete information. What no one knew was that a wrongly installed fitting near one of the engines had compromised the fuel line. A minor technical error, harmless on the ground, had now become deadly over the ocean. Fuel was slowly leaking through that fitting silently, steadily, directly into the Atlantic Ocean. When the crossfeed was opened, the fuel imbalance began to correct itself. But in reality, fuel from both tanks was now flowing toward the same leak. The problem had not been solved. The problem had spread throughout the entire aircraft, and at that moment, no one realized that the airplane was silently losing its most valuable resource, fuel. Time passed, but the silence in the cockpit was no longer what it had been before. The fuel gauges were not telling the story the pilots wanted to hear. The numbers kept dropping at a rate that was far from normal. At first, there was a suspicion that perhaps the sensors were showing errors. It had happened before. Sometimes instruments lie, and pilots are taught not to take every warning as absolute truth immediately, but to see the full picture. But now, the picture was becoming clear. Even with the crossfeed open, fuel was decreasing. Both tanks were emptying at the same time. This was the moment when the problem was no longer just an imbalance. It had become a complete loss of fuel. The pilots recalculated fuel consumption. Speed, altitude, weight, everything was checked. The numbers did not match. The question was no longer what the problem was, but how much time remained. Then a moment came that ended all doubt. The left engine suddenly shut down. No explosion occurred. No fire ignited, just a source of power had ceased. Alarms went off in the cockpit. Warning lights illuminated, and the Airbus's automatic system immediately switched into single-engine flight mode. Flying on one engine was possible. The aircraft was built for it. Pilots had practiced it, but the problem was that the fuel gauges were still dropping. If the leak was not stopped, the second engine would also fail soon. At that moment, the captain made a decision that could mean the difference between life and death. He ordered the aircraft to be turned toward the Azores Islands. These were Portuguese islands in the middle of the Atlantic, and the Lajes Air Base there had the closest usable runway. The distance was still hundreds of kilometers, but it was the only hope. In the cockpit, the situation was reported to air traffic controllers via radio. This was not a routine emergency call. This was an aircraft losing fuel. Over the ocean, in darkness, flying on only one engine. Air traffic control immediately gave the flight priority, and the Azores military base was alerted. In the cabin, passengers still did not know the full truth. The crew maintained calm, no shouting, no panic. Yet, an unspoken anxiety spread inside the aircraft, as if a silent threat was approaching. And then, the moment every pilot fears arrived, the second engine shut down. A massive passenger jet at 39,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean was now completely powerless. No engines. No thrust. Only speed, gravity, and the pilot's skill remained. The aircraft began to glide. This was a situation for which no complete script exists. No guaranteed outcome. No second chance. Only one question remained. Could this aircraft reach the ground without engines? And if it did, would anyone survive? The engines had shut down, but the aircraft was still alive. Power was gone, but speed remained. The Airbus A330 had now become a glider. A giant of steel, carried forward only by gravity. The cockpit was not completely silent, but the noise that gives humans a sense of security had disappeared without the hum of the engines. Every small sound was amplified. The captain and the first officer immediately set the best glide speed. This was the speed that allowed the aircraft to cover the maximum distance without any additional power. The calculations were clear. For every 1,000 feet of altitude, the aircraft could travel approximately 15 kilometers. From 39,000 feet, on paper, the Azores seemed within reach, but there is a difference between paper and reality. Meanwhile, a new threat emerged: electricity. Along with the engines, the generators had also shut down. The aircraft's automatic system deployed the ram air turbine. A small turbine that spins from the force of the airflow, providing limited electricity and hydraulic power. It did not provide full functionality, but it was enough to maintain control. The cockpit lights dimmed. The screens were limited. Now, every decision relied only on basic instruments and experience. This was the moment where modern technology stepped back and human skill came forward. In the cabin, it was no longer possible to hide the truth. The aircraft was unusually silent. Passengers looked out the windows. Below, only the dark ocean. Above, the stars. Flight attendants made announcements, calm in their voice, but truthful in their words. The aircraft was in an emergency, but it was under control. Some passengers began to pray. Some closed their eyes. Some held their children tightly. Time seemed to slow. Every minute felt like an hour. In the cockpit, the lights of the Azores were still not visible, but navigation data indicated they were approaching. Every foot of altitude was precious. No unnecessary turns, no extra speed. Everything could be deadly. Then, through the darkness, a faint light appeared. It was not a star. It was not a thought. It was land. Lajez Air Base. The runway was still far, but it was no longer just an idea. It was a target, a final chance. The pilots lined up the aircraft as if placing an arrow on a bow. Only one chance, only one shot. There was no room for error, because if the speed decreased, the aircraft would plunge into the ocean, and if it was too high, it would crash at the end of the runway. This was the moment when history was about to be written or erased. The runway was ahead, but the danger was not yet over. The aircraft was descending rapidly. Without engines, there was almost no way to increase or decrease speed. The captain decided that the landing could not be done in the usual way. It would be a hard landing, and it was the only way. The flaps were extended to a limited degree. The landing gear came down, but due to low hydraulic power, it locked with a jolt. Every sound echoed in the cockpit like a warning. The ground was approaching fast. The aircraft touched the runway. The first touch was rough, then the second. Then the full weight came down on the ground. But as the pilots attempted to brake, another reality appeared. The anti-skid system was not functioning. The brakes were applied at full force, the wheels began to skid, and the aircraft ran down the runway like a massive steel giant. The runway was ending. At that moment, the captain ordered emergency braking. Smoke rose from the tires. Some wheels burst from extreme heat, but the speed began to decrease. Finally, the aircraft came to a stop just a few meters before the end of the runway. Silence. Then a sound. Someone had clapped. And as the realization spread that the aircraft had stopped, that the ground was solid, that the ocean was behind them, the entire cabin filled with emotion. People were crying, hugging each other. Children were alive. Parents were alive. Everyone was alive. 306 people, passengers and crew, had survived a disaster that had seemed impossible. Later, investigations revealed the truth that made this event historic. It was not human error, nor was it the fault of weather. The problem was a maintenance error. A fuel line near one of the engines had been installed incorrectly, causing fuel to leak slowly, silently, but lethally. The event happened, and it changed the history of aviation. Maintenance protocols were revised. Training procedures were improved. And one truth was permanently proven. Modern aircraft fly on technology, but they survive because of human courage, skill, and decisions.